Greetings. Greetings to
Hi.
all of you. Hi. Hi, Sarah. Tuning
That was
in.
very pretty.
Oh, thank you.
I saw this beautiful like sun over the water over here. It was
Oh yeah.
lovely on this
Well, I am
app
getting a
continues
bit
to.
of echo installation.
Oh.
Let me just try one thing, okay? Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're back. I got it.
Better?
You hear me okay? Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Hi.
Yeah, a little echo. But yeah, delighted to be here. We had off to a bit of a late start. Life happens and families happen. And yeah, I'm so
Single
grateful.
mom life is a whole different circus.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be here. This is The Crow's Nest, which is a weekly dive into the themes of the time from a mythopoetic lens. And, there's some big things that have happened over the past week, of which Sarah here has been a strong commentator through her Instagram, largely, speaking fiercely about some particular happenings, which we'll get into likely very soon. But first, I would love to just offer to the viewers a little bit of your body of work, and more recently, of course, your book, Made into Mother. And I'd just love for you to give a little offering of what is this journey from Made into Mother that you speak of?
Well, it's something you know quite well. It's a rite of passage that's needed to self-actualize and come into our maturity. And it's certainly a buried one from more of a matriarchal culture, which was aligned with the earth and our seasonal realities and the Great Mother and the gods and the goddesses. And so there was a time when we were meant to come into the front lines of our life and bloom like everything in nature and be in that glory of our fullness and our sovereignty and our bloom and our full moon. But if you look around, before we waned, like, the waning moon or the crone or the flower returning to the earth, so there was, as an unmothered woman, who was I had no mentors. I had no consciousness of rites of passage. I had a very much patriarchal consciousness that life was sort of like one way always, and concrete and linear, and it had to you had to just do it the way everyone else had done it. And I was very bad at doing it the way everybody else had done it or did it. And I put together that I didn't have the mature feminine in my life, and I did not see that in any powerful, beautiful, strong, resilient way, which I knew that our ancestors had been. And I put it together through the work of Marion Woodman, the Jungian psychologist, who wrote books on, had books through Sounds True, which is my house now, which is really a beautiful, it's beautiful to still be in that lineage and carry on her lineage and do it through that house, because they tell you all the great stories about her and everything. And so I put together that we were in the immature feminine as a collective, as women. And I went on this deep journey to figure out, like, what was womanhood to our ancestors and mythic womanhood. And then I found the myth of goddess Inanna to really help women die to something stronger, fuller, darker, more whole. And so we built this bridge of made into mother, or immature feminine to the mature feminine, and what that looked like, and what the archetype of the mother in a primordial pre-patriarchal sense was. And that was a really, really powerful archetype to work with. And it works to work with that archetype. And I truly believe the world is crying out for the archetype of the Great Mother. She was stolen and buried from this culture. And that's when the problems began, in my opinion, that we are a motherless culture. And so asking women to learn how to mother themselves in a way they've never been mothered by patriarchal mothers, and then stand up and do that for the world, stand for the sacred, is my work.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, one question I like to ask too when people use the word patriarchy is, how do you define it mythically?
Mythically, is Bell Hooks a mythic legend? I think she's a. Can I say that? I define well. Actually, mythically is a great question, Ian, because when you ask me, I think of a gorgon with like several heads. So there's this like monolith. Oh, the patriarchy. Like everyone just thinks like white man in a suit. I'm like, no, no, no. It has no gender, and it has all these heads, and it lives inside of us, and it's our ableism, it's our misogyny, it's our capitalism, it's our colonialism, it's our it's our racial supremacists, it's whatever. And so once you realize, oh, I have like this like 10-headed gorgon living inside of me that will pop up at all times, and it's my job to slay it, is kind of mythically how I see it.
Mm. Well, it's interesting too, because that image is strong too, and I do think in images often. I think to think mythopoetically, I think is so often in images. And
Yeah.
one understanding I have from a woman, Maya Luna, the poet, who I think you might know.
Oh yeah.
She defined it as something like when a culture loses contact with the deep feminine.
With the feminine.
With the deep feminine is how she often
Oh, yeah.
describes it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so for me, when I think of, again, you say we're in a motherless time, or maybe I could say the modern West, might be to make it a little more specific, but also the sense of the immature masculine, right? There's an
Right.
immature fathering going on as well, and of course, the lineage of Robert Bly, Michael Mead, and all these contemporaries of Marion Woodman as well. Of course, have spent a lot of time in this area, of which I have as well. So in some sense, you're right. Like the absence seems to be of initiatory processes in which to come into deep maturity. And the consequence of that is that sort of the absence of that is kind of what we have. Like at least that's also my understanding, governmentally speaking, turning now to, of course, a major recent event, in the US. Just as a side note, I'm based in Canada, so I'm sort of watching this from a slight distance.
Okay.
Yeah, but of course, the Roe versus Wade, overturning was such a massive happening, and I wonder again this question as you respond to it and to see what's unfolded. How do you look at that from a mythopoetic lens that provides perhaps a deeper level of analysis than maybe some of the simplistic narratives that are out there?
Well, it's sort of like when I look at the world, as a mother to the world, it's like I look at it as like if my child had this massive welt that was bleeding, I wouldn't just try to figure out I wouldn't just try to fix the welt. I would try to figure out where it was coming from, right? Because if we looked at the world is covered in sores and covered in wounds and so what is causing all this pain and all this suffering? It's not happening in a vacuum. It's not happening out, like everything is connected. It's all because of white colonial capitalist patriarchy, that all of this suffering is this modern suffering of like white men taking control, of white men waging war on the body of the earth and the body of women. And for me, that is like patriarchy on steroids, just absolute matricidal death of the mother, murder of the mother behavior. And so I would say this is because these systems need to be torn down, and they need to be torn down now. They're going at a cannibalistic rate. Like we can't keep up. And so we are killing ourselves faster, at a rate now this week, to be a mother, to be a father right now, to look at those headlines and then look back at your kid and still have that fight for them. I lose the fight once in a while. I come back to it, but it does feel like systemic war attacks, like boom, bam, like they just keep hitting us. This current, I guess you could call them government. I don't know what they govern as in care for or protect. But yeah, so if my child were sick, I'd be like, what is causing the root of this sickness? If the world is sick, what is causing? I don't see it as they're not isolated is the word I was going for. These aren't isolated incidents. They're all from the same triple, gorgon. We have to defeat the gorgon, not the heads. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think of a hydra in a way, right? With multiple.
The heart of it, the dark heart of it, right?
Yeah. What, and now
That, you know
image
what
comes
I
to
mean?
me
Like
as
to
well.
pull the heart out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
because
it
it had to
strikes me
grow
as well.
back.
What is the dark heart of this great beast then? Like, how would you define that? Like, what animates that from not just a perhaps a simplistic rendering of, oh well, it's just evil, but like what would be the wound, say, at the heart of this beast?
I think everything goes back to the mother wound. I just think it's a longing for the great mother, a longing for the feminine. Um, and also, yeah, that without the mother, we've lost our heart, we've lost our humanity. They are machines, they're war machines. I mean, I was a war machine in a woman's body, but before my awakening to the feminine, you
Hmm.
know, it was kill or be killed. It was get yours. And if that's another woman's man, who cares? You know, it's like I was a weapon against myself and others. And then I had an awakening to the feminine. And then, of course, that was 11 years ago. Not, of course, you don't know, you might not know me. That was 11 years ago. I had an awakening to the feminine. And at first just like this, you know, slaking the thirst for this mother love that I felt from the feminine, and then building this archetype and working with the goddess and the great mother 11 years. It's like, I know it's what heals. I know if you take this out of me, I am a machine. But if
Hmm.
I have the mother within me, I'm a healer, right? I'm a mother, I'm a caretaker, I'm a helper. But without that mother energy, yeah, I'm a machine.
Hmm. You speak out strongly against what you term, or well, not just you, but you speak of it as white feminism, and and I'd be curious too. And also, like the patriarchalized feminine. I think I'd
Yeah,
be curious to hear, yeah, what you mean by that, like, and how what you found actually kind of uh, rebelling against maybe what, yeah, is often understood as a kind of more mainstream white feminism.
sure. Wait, hold on. This is supposed to be a conversation, and what do you think the dark heart of the patriarchy is?
Uh-huh. Well, this, I've done a whole podcast about it, with multiple episodes. And so,
Okay.
what comes to me in this part of the conversation was, one, there was an incredible episode, conversation with Jane Caputi, who you might know. She's
Mm-hmm.
a sort of feminist author slash filmmaker. And we
Mm-hmm.
had this amazing conversation where we touched on the film Moana,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which, if you recall, I'm assuming you've seen it.
I have a
At the,
5-year-old daughter, so.
yeah, okay. And there's this really powerful sort of confrontation that happens right between the monster and the
Mm-hmm.
heroine in this case, who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. Well, spoiler alert, anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But there's this confrontation, which actually, well, one, the heart of the mother, great mother, is stolen by the hero, right, Maui, which is such a great
Right.
turn of
Right.
events there. That it's actually, the hero is the kind of bumbling fool who actually kicks in motion the destruction of, the land,
Right.
which is it's a really deeply layered critique, actually, which I really loved. Now the other
Yeah.
piece though is that the Moana actually, but she doesn't defeat the evil. She actually makes contact and returns the heart of the goddess, right?
Right.
Like, so there's something
Right.
actually really beautiful, integrative. It's not about overpowering, this great evil, which in fact the evil is actually just the earth, the great goddess who was defiled, or who had her heart stolen, right, in this
Right.
case. So for
Right.
me, there's something in that, right, about this kind of roundabout journey that, let's say, the immature masculine makes by trying to, prove oneself, or to seek glory, when in
Yeah.
fact it's actually a deeper longing to come home, right, a longing to
Yeah.
be welcomed back by the village. But in a conversation I had with Bayo Kamalafe, we had a really beautiful rendering of the sense that, in let's say patriarchal culture, I often use the term domination culture, right, from Rian Eisler's
Sure.
work.
I've seen
But
you say
she,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and how she's rendered a kind of a nice sort of additional layer to the whole thing. But how, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense, it's like it's almost like the youth, the young men in this case, are sent out as, trying to do the best they can to, as the culture tells them to achieve and to do, but there's no village to welcome them back, right? So there's like
Mm-hmm.
nowhere to come home. And so for me, again, it's like that deep wound of like a kind of stuck programming of trying to prove oneself through ways of domination, achievement, competition, and yet there's no place to end that great striving, right? And I see it. There's just the exhaustion amongst so many men. There's just sort of hollowed out
Mm-hmm.
because actually
Mm-hmm.
they would have no way of coming home. So these are all the parts
Mm-hmm.
that come to me, when we contemplate the dark heart.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I wrote a little bit about those fairy tales in my book, about how different they are now since when I
Mhm.
was young, a long time ago, and what the kind of things that were being sponged into my mind versus now, these young warrior princesses, warrior girls.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for that. It's also like, I have to say it really is quite rare still for me to have these conversations with men.
Mm.
Like, I
That
really
sort of have a
appreciate.
certain receptivity or kind of a mythic frame to approach these topics.
Oh, all of it. So first of all, just even a depth of understanding, even some of a feminist lens, of course, a mythopoetic Jungian lens to put it all together.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and also
Cool.
the receptivity, the non-defensiveness, the curiosity is rare.
Mm.
But I just moved to
Thank you.
Maine, and like, there's a lot of chill people around here, so maybe that'll be more. Maybe that'll be different than where I was
Mm.
before. So I forgot what you asked me, though. I'm sorry, because I wanted to know your
No,
answer.
no problem. Well, I go down to the question of white feminism as well, which is
Oh
something
yeah.
at least, more recently you've spoken to. And the reason I bring it up as well is because, somebody might be like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm a mother, I'm showing up, I'm, wearing a pussy hat. Like, what's the deeper analysis that you're sort of challenging, within this? And by the way, I've also read, for example, I think it was Jessica Crispin's why I'm not a feminist manifesto, which you might have seen as well.
Oh, I haven't read
I'm not
that.
sure. Okay,
I
it's
haven't
actually
read that.
there's a similar kind of again, like, it's a double take. It's kind of like challenging feminism, but from a deeper place of feminism. So I feel that in your work as well. There's this kind of
Yeah.
mirror confrontation. Yeah, but please.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's interesting that you asked that question right on the back of me going, this is rare. And I know a lot of men in the spiritual world. Okay.
Mm.
And um, so the thing about that is, like, for you to even understand that is really, for us all to be in a place where we're questioning ourselves is part of the revolution, right? Is to start
Mm.
just questioning ourselves. But so I don't know. It was about January when I had been very, very sick with COVID, um, for a very long time, and I had gotten it from a fellow spiritual sister, and who was anti-vax, and I had vaccinated my family, and we were like, okay, we want to make this work. Like, you have your reasons why you didn't want to do that. I had my reasons why I wanted to do that. I didn't vaccinate my children, but I got vaxxed, and so then there was this idea that we were community leaders, and through care we would take care of each other no matter what happened. And then one day I told her, after watching her children, I said, I got COVID.
Mm.
And she, like, canceled me, like, never talked to me again. I was a bad look. And then I was really, really sick, and I laid in bed, and I was sitting there laying there for a long time. And I had this beautiful visitation from the Black Madonna, the
Mm.
root of suffering, the great mother who she centers herself in the suffering of the world, right in the middle of it, and then she centers her child and the child right in the middle of it. So it's like the mother of the world sitting in the suffering, not trying to run away from it, not trying to aspire out of it, not trying to make $1 million out, just in it, just with it, and just letting it all be with her, and opening herself to it. And true, true primordial, dark, fertile, compassionate, empathetic femininity that I had never touched, and it was with me until I healed. And while I was lying there, I was remembering, don't know if you remember Sarah Beek, who also wrote for Sounds True for a little bit.
Mm.
She wrote a Red Hot and Holy. She was having some huge, celebrity moment with her work, and she was being interviewed by Andrew Harvey, and this all happened about 10 years ago. And Andrew Harvey suddenly was overcome with the energy of Kali and started speaking to Sarah Beek as if he was Kali, and was like, "This is not helping the world. Stop what you're doing. You're a machine. Like, end all the reality show contracts, end the world tour, end the crazy rich retreats. Like, stop it all." And she did, and she stopped her book
Huh?
tour, stopped everything, and went home and started that work. But she didn't name it yet. And just like how I find these systems are so dubious, like I used to think that I was fighting patriarchy because I was fighting for gender equality within the system, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I wrote this today. It was like I was painting beautiful portraits on the prison walls of patriarchy as a white feminist, but as an intersectional feminist, you're smashing them. You
Mm.
want to live outside of them, but white feminism fights to live inside of them, because white feminists are still safe inside the walls. They just want equality. But marginalized women, LGBTQ and trans, Black, Indigenous, women of color, all the women that have been screaming for centuries about this, they've got the blueprint. And that's who I listen to now. And I was like, I come up with these silly poems, but I was like, maybe we were making dollars and cents, but we weren't making any dents in the patriarchy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I feel. We were trying to be like white men. We were trying to be celebrities, which should never be conflated with healers or wise women or wise men, because that's selling an image, which is a lie. And we're trying to bring people the truth. So why should there be that conflation of photo shoots and followings, and you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still divesting. It's been 7 months of really divesting now. But I started my anti-racism work about 5 years ago, but still it's a consciousness that had to be challenged, and consciousness lives inside of me. Just like my ageism, just like my capitalism, my colonialism, all that stuff. So it's all part of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me again think that I mean, I like what you said about the wallpaper of the prison, versus
Yeah.
smashing it down,
Smashing.
and and how, for me, and I believe I also picked up on this in some of your posts, is that it's like so much of the frame around, whether it's, yeah, like, support for mothers or parenting, or um, like, yeah, economic concerns, all these things, like, unless those things actually take into account not the sort of romanticized understanding of the loss of village, but the
Right.
actual functional, like, structural intelligence of village,
Yes.
right? That otherwise it's just like, I have another teacher, Stephen Jenkinson, but he says it's like, setting up your
I love
tent.
him.
Okay, great. Yeah, he says setting up your tent in a valley, not realizing it's a crater,
Yeah.
right? As in the thing has already happened, and so much of the conversation, or so much of the discourse, actually isn't taking into account the thing that already happened, that is actually impacting so much. All of the conversations, all of the wonderings, all of the attempts to solutionize,
Hmm.
what to do about it. And so, I also wonder. I mean, I wonder about that a lot. Which, of course, one of the reasons why myself and a few others have crafted the school of mythopoetics, of which
Hmm.
is this attempt to bring folks together in this way. This way, and I look out and I see decisions being made around as well. Like I see the climate, or the Clean Air Act as well. It seems like it just got repealed or something in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like these kinds of sort of deep assaults, you could say, on a direction towards sanity, and
Hmm.
yet, I mean, it sort of really calls into question, of course, the myth of progress as some kind of like linear march towards ever better times, but rather a kind of, what's the word, like a delicate relationality between factors, that is easy to lose, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
any kind of cultural health is actually easy to lose if it's not tended
Mm-hmm.
well and appropriately. And so, yeah, I mean, all of this is sort of, what we're steeped in as we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to craft our way back towards sanity. But I want to
Mm-hmm.
again
Mm-hmm.
return to what stirs in you and all that when I say that, again, like this is bridging as well to the loss of village, or to the, what does it mean to actually divest, but also to be reliant, right? And continually
Mm.
be reliant on systems that are collapsing.
Sure. I wanted to get back to like laying in bed after that betrayal from another sister, allowed me to lay there and think about the 11 years of this just not working, of me constantly burning out, of these kind of constant betrayals, and of that helplessness of like, if I'm a leader, where am I leading them? I don't seem to know how to get out, you know. And there was other women who had the way out, and that's who I needed to listen to, and sit back. So somebody is saying that if somebody doesn't like me very much, they're saying things about me. That's fine. Um, so so yeah, it was just kind of like it was a time to really take my own medicine and listen to my elders and listen to the women who had come before me and humble myself in mother. And so when I hear about the village, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of romanticism around it, in especially when you haven't come into mature relational skills, like because I think it's something like 60% of all intentional communities collapse within 4 years or something because they just
Oh,
combust through a lack of. Is that true?
I I think it's higher actually.
It's higher.
I
So
suspect
I
it's
can
higher.
see
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I can see that because especially even at retreats when women come together without mature relational skills, the combustion, the sort of the falling back into the patriarchal tendencies to push each other out, have a hierarchy, that sort of thing. And so if we don't come to the land in our maturity, I don't think we really stand a chance. Also, like, but we're practicing it again this summer. I've now practiced for 4 summers, and you just take note of all the challenges. And this year, we're better at it, but better at it than ever. But it's going to take a ton of work to actually get there in a relational sense. But when you get there, we have these moments of sweet spots when, we're sharing all the childcare, all the food, all the clothes, all the kids' clothes, and it's so economical when it works, and also the women's labor all being shared. We have time to breathe, live, do
Yeah.
nothing for a moment, which is in itself a rebellion
Yeah.
for a woman to
Yeah.
just exist and do nothing for a moment. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I'll say as well, I've been working for the last 7 years on a film project based on a community in Portugal called Tamera, which you may have
Uh-huh.
heard what about. But they also, yeah, they really demonstrate in a way that to be a communal being is a skill. Like it's
Yeah.
actually a skill that actually, and is not for, if you haven't been conditioned by it and by living in it in fashion, it's actually really difficult because absolutely your egoic understanding individualist self butts up against a lot of this
Sure.
communal intelligence. So I guess what I'm left with as well is that even for a lot of people that say yes, we need community, we need all this, actually don't have the skill to be in it without
Exactly.
causing train wreck after train wreck with the way that they are. So I'll say for me as well, yeah, I'm all about bridging as well, and of course this film that will come out this fall is meant to be a
Yeah.
deep bridge. You know,
Congratulations.
Thanks. through modeling like that. And I know we're getting to the end of our all too brief 30 minutes here, but yeah, I wonder what would you like to leave the listeners with, in this conversation? Like, what is your edge now as you look out? Again, you see Roe versus Wade, you see the climate, act being repealed, you
Right.
see the challenges, and you see, your child right in front of you. And
Yeah.
what's the direction that you face in all this?
Um, I look to Joanna Macy, like who again, I'm in this humbled receiving place. And so Macy would say, especially now because of what they did to the EPA, that it's like really up to individuals now. Like, I mean, it always has been, but it just feels helpless. And when you feel helpless, you have to just do everything that you can. And so the closest thing we have to a solution is living in community and living the solution in those like ecologically centered communities and mother communities. And so I just stay with that, like my river, that all I can do is live in, the solution. And even if, the worst comes to worst, I tried, but I have to, like we say in Maiden, we talk it, which is natural. And because you're practicing, you're looking, you're learning. And then in Mother, we really have to walk it. So I'm up here in Maine looking to find that land and continue to figure this women getting along, from all different backgrounds and, economics and all, and learning to come together with a common goal. And so, yeah, that's where I am. Macy would say community is our only hope. Certainly in isolation, we're just terrified, frozen, helpless. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. I reading your site as well as I was researching, you had a line which I appreciated around the maiden mother distinction, where something like maiden thinks that there's forever, or they have forever, whereas mother knows, time is finite, and what's worth doing, I think, shifts, of course, when you recognize actually you don't have all the time in the world. You have enough time to do what's yours to do. So
that's all. That's it. Thank you for doing Beautiful. What's yours to do.
Likewise. I'd love to just invite others to check out your website, themotherspirit.com, where they can find links to all your body of work. Your Instagram is quite lively, as well as, of course, your book. Your book, Made into Mother, is available lots of places, I assume. Yeah, and for those that also want to check out, these conversations are available here on YouTube as well as on Spotify, all those places. And if you want to join the school, which is where we dive into a lot of this stuff here, schoolofmythopoetics.com, and we'd love to have you. So once again, Sarah, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me.
It was such a pleasure, and thank you. And thank you to my child for being quiet. Okay, bye, Ian.
Okay.